There are calls for LA Mayor Karen Bass to step down, but that's not a big deal, okay? She has to step down. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. This is where the Happy Patriots are. I'm gonna show you guys some pretty cool videos about the wildfire that is in the end hopeful, because this is gonna come down to, can they rebuild LA or not? They have to remove all of the Democrats in leadership and all of their calcified laws. But here's the good news. The will of Los Angeles is with us against their own Democrat leadership. In a representative government, it will not last for long. And it may not necessarily take until an election before you get these Democrats, because I'm talking about the Democrat voters, the people down in LA, even in the Palisades, they want Republican leadership. That's good news for all of us. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. Here we go.
Who picks that replacement? It's the LA City Council. The LA City Council is universally, basically 100% aligned with Mayor Bass. They are, in fact, pretty much worse than she is on many aspects.
LA fire stations are falling apart, and there are some that are even dangerous. Over the past few days, I've probably been to 20 firehouses, and what I've seen has been absolutely infuriating. It is impossible to get anything fixed. Most of the firemen I've talked to this week do the repairs at the stations themselves with their own money. I am not exaggerating this. The very first firehouse I pulled up to, there were firemen in the back filling in a pothole with sand. If LAFD finds out you've made any of your own repairs, you're punished. I have talked to firemen that have to barter supplies with other stations to get the supplies that they need. At the next station, when I asked the fireman if I can come in and document the damage, he said, just take pictures of the outside of the building and you'll know what the inside is like. This fire station, its garage door has been broken for a year. They've begged and begged LAFD in to fix it, who was punishing them for not having quick enough response times. And it got repaired this week only because the local community stepped in and fundraised money. There's stuff like this citywide, and LAFD is terrified you'll find out because they know you'll be pissed. The mold infestation at Los Angeles Fire Station 112 was so bad, it sent its fire chief to the hospital. He was on life support for 3 weeks. His leg turned black and they had to amputate his thumb. Mold is a huge problem. It isn't just one fire department, it's like 15 and very well documented. Going back to station 112, after complaints and complaints, I talked with a guy who self-financed his own mold test. When the inspector came, he told him it was the worst case of mold he'd seen in his life. Another fireman here refused to go into the kitchen because every time he did, his face would break out in hives. The firemen here were sleeping on the fireboat until their higher up told them they had to stop doing that because it looked bad. Why is this like this? There's multiple reasons, but the biggest is the union. An active fireman told me there's a lack of funding, goes nowhere bureaucracy, inaccessible chain of command, and mismanagement. So look, I'm not intimate with this union's policies, but if it's any indication, they might have the one flagpole I have seen in the city that's not flying at half-mast. Seems like they have a lot of respect. A fireman told me every fireman in the city are terrified to talk to you.
This is a huge corruption. This shows how corrupt they are. By the way, anything that has a union on it in LA, that means one voice. You're not allowed to have any dissenting opinion on it. This is no different than the writers union or the or unions of anyone in Hollywood or in talent. Teachers unions, they shut everything down. So the firemen's union will actually keep money from being spent on the fire trucks. And this is about, there's whole ghost towns of their fire trucks that are not able to be fixed. We're going to get them fixed, guys. There's a huge call now to turn all this stuff around. But this guy, I like this whistleblower for going around and actually documenting it all.
This is actually the reason why firemen can't talk to media. As a fireman told me, it's their way of damage control. And anyone knows if they talk to media, they'll be fired. I've had a gut-wrenching week talking to people who have lost their houses every single day. And this is the first story where I've had someone in tears in front of me. I need to thank Watchdog LA for pointing me in the direction of these stories. Over the next few weeks, you're gonna see people behind podiums downtown being like, these are our city's heroes. And I just want you to know, the moment they step away from that podium, they're okay with their heroes being treated like dogs.
Now that's about LA City. They say they love their firemen. Now remember, when they recall or if Karen Bass resigns, it's the LA City Council that appoints a replacement. So they're going to try to protect that job by replacing her with another Democrat bureaucrat, not a butt kicker, not someone who gets stuff done. But that's why they're protecting Gavin Newsom. They have to get rid of Karen Bass first and then control her replacement with the current Marxist, globalist, mind-rotted people. That same philosophy is going to appoint her replacement. And that's not going to get things done. This is going to come down to the people are going to have to do this to get things done. I have some Bill Maher. I know you guys have seen some of this, but he absolutely roasts the LA fires, Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom. Watch this.
And finally, new rule. We may not be able to do much about the weather, but we do need a better plan for putting out a burning city than waiting for rain. America is so partisan now that even when there's a disaster of any kind, so many people choose to defend their own team, even over death. A lot of Democrats in this one-party state this week went right to, don't blame politicians, you can't do anything about the wind, which is exactly half true, the wind part. Yes, fire is a tough fight out here, and yes, global warming absolutely makes it worse, but that's largely out of our control. What are we going to do, pass a ballot measure to make sure Chinese stop burning coal? It's also, yes, undeniably true that LA is built in a stupid place to build a city. But when it's not on fire, it's really quite lovely. And it's my home. And stupid as its origin may be, it's not going anywhere. Axios ran a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in this state every year to people who I assumed were working on things like this.
Oh, big applause line. 13% of your taxes flushed down a toilet. Now, he absolutely eviscerates them, but the key word there is he said, it's also my home. That LA was once my home too. Liberals, they have the luxury of ripping on Republicans, but man, that luxury is done. They're done with that charade when it takes their home or their friends' homes or their families' homes, and that's exactly what's happening. These liberals are done.
When asked why so many of the hydrants in the Palisades ran out of water, Governor Newsom said the local folks are trying to figure that out. Yeah, you got to do that before the fire. At least in the Palisades, the hydrants were still there. 300 other ones around the city are just gone, stolen for parts. One of the 3 reservoirs for the Palisades was offline at the one time of year when it was most needed. LA's Mayor Karen Bass, the Nero of American politics, was fiddling in Ghana while the city burned and later placed the blame on 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years. Yeah, that's not that long a time. Maybe look in the history books to see how our ancestors handled it back in 2011.
Burned them. And to me, the biggest thing was those 300 fire hydrants missing out of theft. That goes into LA's policy under Gavin Newsom and frankly, Kamala Harris, where they did not prosecute what they considered petty crimes, anything below a felony, or they turned these events where they would steal fire hydrants and, by the way, copper wiring for electrical stuff to recycle for their drugs. It's a huge crime city that all tells you this is all Democrat policies on soft on crime. They only get away with it because they're wall-to-wall Democrat leadership. There's no one to challenge them. And our country is built on being able to challenge power. There's a massive recall effort on Karen Bass that is coming. That is good news. Okay, now this sounds a little bad on this next clip, but you'll get the point. They've got a giant ballot measure going, a giant recall effort going on Karen Bass. They've already got a ton of signatures, 150,000 just in a couple days. It was 60,000 last time we checked.
Call for the immediate recall of Mayor Karen Bass due to her gross mismanagement and failure to effectively respond to the devastating 2020 fires. In the wake of these catastrophic fires, our city has been left in crisis. Water supplies have been severely strained. Billions of taxpayer dollars have been misallocated or left unaccounted for, and countless lives have been lost. Families have been displaced, homes destroyed, livelihoods shattered, yet Mayor Bass has been absent from the front lines, choosing to travel abroad while her constituents suffer. Despite the tireless efforts of our first responders, the city has been woefully unprepared to ensure the safety and well-being of its residents. Basic resources such as water and emergency services have been inadequate, and leadership has been nowhere to be found when it was needed most. We demand the immediate resignation of Mayor Karen Bass due to her failure to lead during this unprecedented crisis. It goes on. I'm signing the petition right now during the commercial break, and let's put a link on our website for it.
They're going to recall her. 150,000 signatures. Who in LA does not want her recalled? Everyone. So it's just a matter of time for the population they're publicizing this whole thing on the radio to get her out. It's going to take a little time, but it's going to work. This is the fire chief, Joe Everett. This guy is amazing, humble, and I feel bad for him. He falls on his sword. He feels bad and feels like he failed his community. Remember the previous video? That's why I showed you that one first. That they pay for their own trucks out of their own pockets. They pay for their own mold repair out of their own pockets, filling potholes, bartering equipment with other fire stations. And now there's a difference between this guy's attitude, who actually does the work, versus Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, that are doing anything but saying, gee, guys, I feel like I failed you. None of that. They're too busy protecting themselves. That's how you know they're guilty.
That the majority of Californians are fed up with our leadership, especially in the light of the wildfires and especially in the light of Newsom's very arrogant, uncompassionate response to this, trying to politicize it and trying to deflect blame to anyone but himself.
It's extremely hard for me to look you in the eye, knowing that, quite honestly, I feel like I failed you to some respect. Moving on, let's get into business.
The audience knows he wasn't to blame, that it wasn't his fault. They all know who's to blame. You don't have to fear saying, I feel like I failed you, because now the people know that they can trust you again, that you're not just some goon who's going to defend himself all day no matter what. This is a series of articles I'm going to read for you that show that Karen Bass is now being investigated with 1,500-page document being released, and she is going to get smashed. That is, I believe that even the LA Democrats are putting this stuff out about her. LA Mayor Karen Bass's office hit with scandals over hush money, bribes, and accusations of legalized corruption. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass got into office promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, and promising to tackle homelessness and pollution, but she never promised to drain the swamp. Now she stands accused of adding to it through legalized corruption and a number of eye-opening scandals which have come to light after renewed scrutiny in the last 2 weeks following the revelation Bass and her cronies defunded the LA Fire Department $17 million, contributing to them being unprepared to tackle the wildfires during destroying the city. The deputy mayor raided by the FBI over an alleged bomb threat against City Hall. Now that's the next in command who phoned in a bomb threat. That is, people in her leadership did this, and that was another diversity appointment. Endorsing a former counselor investigated over hush money payments for Congress, awarding fat cat salaries of $750,000 a year to a pal, doubling the predecessor's salary, also a DEI hire. Council members accused of embezzlement, perjury, racketeering, tax evasion, and bribes. It's the story of Chinatown, and it likely led to the intensity of the fires. The 1974 Hollywood film, which stars Jack Nicholson as a crusading private detective, chronicles the corruption in LA's public utility company that controls water flowing to the city. Today, that same company, the LA Department of Water and Power, is a sprawling bureaucracy in need of serious reform, but has remained largely unchecked by politicians as it brings in billions from ratepayers to city government, Court told the Post it's a sacred cow and a slush fund for the city with a serious lack of accountability. Department of Water and Power is controlled by the mayor and city council. Last year, Bass hired Janice Quinones, that's the $750,000 a year woman, a fellow progressive who opaquely stressed her mission would be, quote, righting the wrongs that we've done in the past from an infrastructure perspective, unquote, as CEO of the utility. Bass pays her $750,000 a year salary, almost double what her predecessor was making. Quinones has been blamed by some members of the city's council fire department for failing to fix broken hydrants, many of which ran dry as the Palisades fire consumed homes in the Malibu and Pacific Palisades neighborhoods on January the 8th. Consumer Watchdog and the LA Times launched a lawsuit in federal court last year to unseal dozens of warrants in an extortion scheme involving the LA City Attorney's Office and the Department of Water and Power. The unsealed documents, some 1,400 pages, revealed the FBI believed Mike Feuer, the former city attorney, the top lawyer to the city, had lied to investigators when he denied knowledge of a hush money payment to hide a litigation scandal in his office. Bass, 71, initially came under the microscope for attending the inauguration of Ghana's president earlier this month as fires began to rage in the city. She has continued to deflect questions about her Africa trip, where she was part of a 4-member presidential delegation, as photos emerged this week of her attendance at a cocktail party. Bass, who did not respond to the Post's request for comment, was another recipient of a USC scholarship from Flynn in 2011 during what was her first year in Congress. Bass was working on a master's degree in social work, which she completed in 2015. According to court papers, Flynn hoped to enlist Bass to obtain federal funding for the school. That drags USC, University of Southern California, into this whole thing. Now, I believe all this paperwork is being released on Karen Bass because the Democrats are putting her in the targets. They're going to get her to resign or recall her with these signatures. She's going down. Then LA City Council appoints her replacement. But you have to do that first before we get Gavin Newsom. And so movement on Karen Bass, keeping the heat on her, and the heat's not coming off her yet. The rebuild is not going to happen. You saw what those fire stations were like, and the Department of Water and Power was like, this is a crumbling, disastrous institution, a bureaucracy made, plenty of money, by the way, billions and billions of dollars in their control, and they're not passing it on. Just that this scandal is being released, and it's being released by U.S. News, by USA Today, by mainstream media outlets. LA Times, remember, has a new editor in town, and they're willing to criticize the fire. This is all being exposed now by Democrat media, and that's good news. I'm Doug in exile. If you want to see more videos, one right here, and if you want to subscribe, boop, right there.